Good day. My name is John Korstein. I'm Director Emeritus of the USS Monitor Center here at the Mariners Museum at Park. And we have a program known as the Monitor Legacy Programs. And one of that legacy is a man known as John Lomer Worden. And it just so happens that I'm working on a book about Worden, which will be done in just a couple of months, with a collateral descendant of Worden, Robert Worden. And so we've been really putting together this. And this story I'm going to tell today has never seen the light of day really before because everyone overlooks Worden's service except for on the Monitor, but he does so many other things which really you could see his progression as an officer and as a leader. And so that's why he'll end up as a Rear Admiral. Now, I also have to compliment one person, Emily Claus, who is my photo researcher. She found this image that's purported to be a young John Lomer Worden. Most of the images you see of him are all Civil War. So this is interesting if it is indeed he. But nevertheless, during the 1840s, we are imbued with what's known as the Manifest Destiny. It was our duty to move westward and make the world or America safe for Anglo-Saxons to thrive. Now, that's a theory we don't like to talk about much anymore, but it really comes full circle in the Mexican War. And as we know, the Mexican War is going to be caused as a result of the annexation of Texas, the disputed border between the River Nueces and the Rio Grande. We send Zachary Taylor down there. There's some battles, and all of a sudden we declare war. And our war aims, according to James Polk, the President of the United States, was to, I'll come back to that, was to capture Alta California, Baja California, New Mexico, and there was even thoughts of taking over the state of Sonora. These were things that would have given the United States even greater resources, and our story basically is going to really focus mostly on Baja California because that's where Worden is going to serve. Now, the trying to maintain these rightful boundaries is amazing. On the Pacific coast, we have the Pacific Squadron. Eventually, it's going to be commanded by Robert Stockton, who is an impetuous individual, and he tries to supersede his command. His opposite in the Army is going to be Stephen Watts Kearny, and so once they conquer Alta California, there's an uprising. However, they put it down, and then Stockton says, well, I'm in charge. And Kearny said, well, wait a second, look at my orders. Stockton says, too bad. And he names John Fremont as the military governor going over Kearny's head. So there's all these arguments and everything. Stockton gets replaced by Bradford Shuford. Then Shuford will be replaced by Charles Biddle. Then Biddle will leave, and Shuford's going to be in command. Shubrick, excuse me. And he's the guy that's going to lead in the conquest of Baja California. Now, as you can see, the Pacific Squadron does not have a tremendous amount of ships. And they basically have a supply base at Valparaiso, Chile. They also would go all the way to Hawaii to get supplies to maintain themselves on station. And ergo, why we have a certain type of vessel called storeships. Storeships were actually older sloops and brigs that are not tip-top in their sailing abilities, and so they will clear out the hole to be able to handle all these supplies. And I'm going to read you some of the supplies that the Southampton is going to deliver. Now, like most all naval officers, John Worden sought active service when the United States went to war with Mexico. He was at the US Naval Observatory working with Matthew Fontaine Maury, and all of a sudden he says, well, I want to go on active service. And all younger officers in the U.S. Navy wanted that. That's the chance to gain glory. Just remember Stephen Decatur during the Tripolitane War. He becomes a great hero. I want to be like Decatur. That was the goal. Now, I don't know how disappointed he was, but he would be named executive officer of the USS Southampton. There's no images of the Southampton available, but he's just been promoted from master in line for promotion into lieutenant. So and he gets named executive officer of the Southampton, so that and he has to leave Gosport Navy Yard and sail all the way through the Straits of Magellan, all the way up to the Pacific coast of California. Just to get there was a feat of seamanship. And I have to say that as he's going through all these places, he's gaining supplies. Like he talks about being at the Rio de Janeiro, and how the later governor of Virginia, but ambassador to Brazil, Henry Wise, during a great salute to the Brazilians, he just comes on board and makes no big fanfare. There at Rio, thank you. He was able to really resupply his ship, take special orders. Now, this is the last time they're going to see land until they make it all the way around to Valparaiso. And this is the harbor of Valparaiso. This is a major port of call for the U.S. Navy. Now, I have to tell you, they will make Valparaiso. Now, basically, they leave Gosport 18 January, and they don't make it to Valparaiso until 17 June. So they're still about 6 to 8 weeks sail away from their destination. And so they're going to arrive, and of course, in what is now known as San Francisco. They come into the harbor, and already it's going to be heavily controlled by the United States. The United States had been able to defeat the Californios, who were trying to, some of them said, yay, we like the Americans here. Others said, no, we don't. We'll see this happen time and time again. But the great thing is that Worden gets to Monterey, then goes to Monterey, which is the official capital of California at this time. All the battles in Alta California are already over. So while he's there, he's a supply ship, right? And in one case, he delivers to the USS Portsmouth 431 gallons of whiskey, 933 pounds of rice, and then he turns around and provides 955 gallons of whiskey to the Congress. This is that great grog ration that we have to have. Now, being a store ship is one thing, but it also, in the case of the California campaigns, it is also a warship. And so it is armed with two 42-pounder carronades, which are very, by this time, archaic guns, but nevertheless, they have firepower and they also have a crew. Because the conquest of Baja California is going to be mostly made by Marines and what we call blue jackets, that the Army is only going to send 3 companies of New York volunteers to support the action. And all along the Gulf of California are these important little port cities. It is amazing what they all say about being in Baja. They said it's the most beautiful. They talk about La Paz being the most beautiful town, whitewashed adobe houses and palm trees, date trees, and they said it is luscious. Henry Halleck actually says, and the senoritas were especially nice. I can't read that quote to you, but he writes, Halleck is going to write a memorandum of his time in Mexico, so we get all these insights. So it's a beautiful countryside, pearl fishing, regular fishing, and so forth, major industries. So basically, what we'll know is that when Bradford Shubrick takes command, his job is to stop at various ports. And when stopped at these various ports, so now here's San Francisco early on, he is going to, now one of the things that the Southampton has on board are 2, now this is a Civil War image, but they have 2 of these 10-inch Seacoast mortars. Remember, all the war materiel has to come all the way down from San Francisco, from Monterey, and deposit itself inside at various locations. Now, this ship is one of the lead vessels, and so by having warships, the U.S. Navy is able to control certain towns. But they learn very quickly that they have to occupy those towns, and they can only occupy them with actually soldiers. So what happens is one of the major towns on Baja California is going to be La Paz, as well as San Jose del Cabo, right? And so you occupy these communities, and Worden is on board the Southampton when they come to San Jose, we'll just call it San Jose, on 28 November 1847. And this was a welcome sight because DuPont, who commanded the Cayenne, would drop off a detachment of Marines. The trouble is he doesn't have enough men on board, so the commander of these Marines is known as Lieutenant Charles Haywood. And Haywood actually, believe it or not, knows Worden, and Worden knows him from a previous cruise in the Mediterranean on board the Cumberland. Well, Haywood is going to, see, what happens is so amazing. When the Americans first come, the Governor Miranda says, whoop, we'll surrender, we'll sign peace accords, we love you Americans, we want to be Americans. And actually, they get extraterritoriality. They're named American citizens. Just think, these independent naval officers get to do kind of what they want to do. Just think how long you could take to get orders from Washington, and you'll realize the communication problems. So basically, Worden first goes ashore at San Jose del Cabo on 14 November. He meets with Lieutenant Haywood, and Haywood has 20 Marines 4 past shipments, and about 20 or so Californians or Californios that have volunteered to fight against the insurgents, because there is a great group of insurgents commanded by Captain Piana, and he will have a plan to liberate these towns, because one thing is capturing San Jose del Cabo, but the Americans are going up the coast to conquer La Paz, Guaymas, and in doing so, they're effecting control. But it's only when those ships are there that, you know, the Americans are really safe with their smaller garrisons. There's just not enough men. And actually, there's a great cry for more soldiers to be sent from Winfield Scott's command, because Shubrick, when he makes it to La Paz, he gives a proclamation that Baja California is now American territory and will be so forever. That's exactly what Polk wants him to say, but there's no one to disagree with him. These small Mexican irregulars will actually besiege La Paz and also San Jose Cabo. And so basically the Southampton is going to show up and basically, as they learn more about the advance of these irregulars, they become to really prepare for it. So according to Worden, that they went up to Matazan and they received 8 Marines. They then received even more blue jackets. Worden, meanwhile, is going to actually train everyone in small arms because they know they're going into a combat zone. He will be there when they actually test their 42-pounder carronades, which Worden realizes is not adequate to really make it effective gunboat, because those carronades have an effective range of maybe 250 yards. Okay, so you can't get really in close. But we're going to fix that. So the Southampton arrives just in time because the garrison at San Jose is going to have a 9-pounder cannon and 20 pro Baja Californios, and actually by this time 28 Marines and 4 past midshipmen. Now Pineda will actually bring a force of 150 irregulars, and under the command of a Lieutenant Vincente Mejia, and starts to besiege the position on 19 November. This is pretty terrible. They lead an assault against their gun position. They're thrown back, but this outpost is isolated. And so the Worden gets off, goes in a cutter, goes ashore with the ship's surgeon, James McClellan. And as James McClellan will support the wounded and the sick, what's even more important is that Worden now assess the situation. And working with him, believe it or not, on several occasions is going to be this guy, Henry Halleck. So you can see from here where these ports are. La Paz, right, San Jose del Cabo. We're trying to operate all the way up to Mulegg and trying to control all this area, because that will mean that they're able now to launch a campaign against Acapulco, right, that then could march straight to the Mexico City. So these are San Jose del Cabo is the southernmost city. La Paz is a major port for Baja, so you can just see the situation that the Americans have. They've got 6 ships operating, and that's not enough to control all this territory. Now, Worden's going to go ashore, and he is going to get 10 more Marines to reinforce the American position. He then transfers a 12-pounder carriage gun with 10 rounds of solid shot and 10 stands of grape and 200 gallons of whiskey to the base at Calbo. You know, they got to have their whiskey ration. You just got it, I got to tell you. So, thanks to Worden, they're going to fortify what is known as Dr. Mott's house, and they actually place a cannon on top. This is the plaza where Worden's going to go next. So basically, the San Jose situation had been stabilized, and then the Southampton received supplies from a brig, the Libertaire, and from Chile. Then they go up and resupply La Paz. Meanwhile, they are going to go to Guatemala, and the store ship receives special repairs. Bad winds damage their sails, and Worden guides the hosting of one of the 10-inch mortars out of the whole of the Southampton, and then puts it in a launch, and then they take that launch and deliver it to an island at the mouth of the Bay of Guatemala, or the harbor, basically. And so what's really great is that under Worden's command, Gunner William Myers will set up the mortar. However, when they fire it the first time, guess what happens? The trunnion breaks off. So, this is back-breaking work, 9,000 pounds of a mortar. So they have to go back, get the other mortar, bring it ashore with all of its armaments, supplies, Marines, and blue jackets, and Worden supervises all of this. Now, he also supervises the addition of 2 32-pounder guns, shell guns, to the armament of the Southampton. These weapons are all coming at a time when the storeship is supposed to play a more active role. It's carrying Marines and blue jackets, actually gets reinforced to actually deliver troops to different places. Now, I have to tell you, in a cutting out expedition, Worden is going to be able to capture a ship known as the Fortuna. And this is a Mexican schooner, and so they'll capture it. And guess who's named commander? Worden. So this is his first command of a warship, and he does so with, he goes on a cruise, captures a couple of fishing boats. He doesn't really, he helps defend the stores at La Paz, but his ship only has an 8-man crew. So they're more of a force in being to kind of make the loyal Mexicans, and you have to realize half of the people in Baja, California are pro-American, the other half are not. So you have a very difficult circumstance. Now, so Worden is going to be going to do well with the Fortuna, just capturing some small little boats. Now, the big thing is his service is really all about, he actually goes on another cutting out expedition in the 1st of April with Henry Halleck, right? And they don't achieve any success. So Worden is meeting all these various people who are going to play a huge role in the Civil War. And that perhaps is one of the most important things I believe he does during this conflict. Now, I got to tell you, he runs around resupplying. I found all these supplies he's giving to various warships, and where that note is, I don't know. Well, so just on one day in Guatemala, the Southampton is going to give to the squadron. The Portsmouth gets 12 barrels containing 431 gallons of whiskey, 933 pounds of rice, and then the Congress gets 2 barrels of 2,992 pounds of bread, and again 11 barrels of rice, and 27 barrels filled with 955 gallons of whiskey. He goes on the next day, and they stop a Chilean ship, but he will deliver to the post at La Paz, ready for this, 40 barrels of pickles, 1 bale of blankets, 2 bales of mattresses, 29 barrels of beans, and so the Southampton is like a traveling 7-Eleven, I guess, for the sailors and so forth. He now also, while he is at sea, he's constantly training his blue jackets, because many of them, what's a 42-pounder carronade, and so they have to learn how to operate the gun, how to sight it, and so forth. He actually goes on a special mission on 7 January 1848 with past midshipman Henry K. Stevens and gunner William Myers to deliver a communication to the Mexican general commanding Sonora. We don't know who that was at that time, or I couldn't find it. And so then he has another command with its armed, a cutter is armed with a 12-pounder carriage gun, and they're going to try and pick up and stop Mexican trade that's going throughout the Gulf of California. And this is really great, because this is where he captures his first ship, the Rosalita, and takes it to La Paz. Now, capturing a ship when you are a young lieutenant in wartime, what does that mean to you? Well, you get prize money. Every ship's worth money, and although the Pacific Squadron commander gets a cut, Worden got a cut himself, as well as all the men in his crew. So this was really, I guess, part of the highlight of Worden's time in the Gulf of Mexico. He actually will become very, very ill on 28 April, and for gastric derangement. Now, translating that into modern words, he's got gallstones. And he actually has to transfer to yet another ship, and the Lexington, and then he transfers to the Independence. Eventually, he'll be transferred to the Ohio. Now, meanwhile, during this time, he needs to go home. His grandfather dies, struck in the head with a mule and goes insane and dies. He's got some family issues he needs to take care of, but the Navy they never really answer, yes, you can go home. But they move him to another ship, the Ohio, that instead of going back to the East Coast, goes out to Hawaii, goes on a long cruise. Here, Worden continually is suffering from this gastric derangement. Now, in looking at Worden's career, he is sick a lot, believe it or not. And mostly, had he been in today's world, Worden would have had his gallbladder removed, the kidney stones removed, all those things. But so it was a reoccurring ailment that he had, and that will affect him for the rest of his life. No one knows really how to solve that problem. So basically, Worden sends a formal request, and so he had to report to the ship of the line, Ohio, and so that continues in the Pacific. Worden actually writes the Navy Department, "I beg the department will pardon me when I earnestly ask for a speedy return to my family." It was not until 16 June 1849 that he finally, this is after being sick in April of 48, it takes the Navy almost a year to say, well, yes, you can go home, and by the easiest convenience. And so he goes on a commercial ship. Now, he actually, in several of the letters he sends to the Secretary of Navy, he will actually be very humble and ask. He said, "I've never asked for anything like this before, and that I need to do so now. I've been on service with this squadron for 3 years. It's time for me to go home. Hint, hint, I've got family problems." Navy kind of ignores him. So he does return to the East Coast, but he wasn't given orders to return home in the first public vessel until 16 June 1849. So it's a kind of amazing how the Navy works. But once again, he has to petition the Secretary of Navy. He has to petition the commander of his squadron, who then forwards his request to the Secretary of Navy. Now, if you are in California, how long is that going to take becomes the question. And it's months of travel time and so forth. Now, what did Worden's life on the Southampton do for his career? Number one, he serves as executive officer, and a very active one. He maintains accounts of all the material. Remember, they've got thousands upon thousands of gallons of just whiskey that they're delivering, and so he has to keep all that accounted for, and the purser would have done so under Worden's supervision. And we also know that he doesn't see combat necessarily. He does capture a ship. He does go on cutting out expeditions in cutters. He does improve the American defenses at San Juan de Cabo, as well as at La Paz. And La Paz is really being threatened by the Mexicans, because you just don't have enough blue jackets to control with still being able to manage your ship. So what does he learn? He learns great lessons about logistics. That's what his real job is all about. And of course about navigation, to go around, or through the Straits of Magellan or around the Horn. That is a tremendous navigational feat. And as the executive officer, he would need to actually work on maintaining the ship during that time. And I think his work to enhance Lieutenant Charles Haywood's position in San Jose de Cabo was really pretty amazing. He lays out the fortifications and strengthens the American base, and does the same thing at La Paz with Henry Halleck. That's a great thing. But Worden, I could not find any letters that he's writing home about his time. He doesn't write like Henry Halleck about how beautiful the senoritas are and so forth. That's going to be in the book, but The big thing is that he gained all this practical knowledge. He's not under fire, but he's in a combat zone where he acts with great valor, skill. He's learning about he's a naval officer. He has to learn about fortifications. And in doing so, that's how he interfaces with Henry Halleck. Halleck actually goes on one mission with Worden to try to capture Mexican vessels. So, what did Worden gain from his time in the Gulf of Mexico? Tremendous experience. Logistics, as I said, actually being in a combat zone, understanding the logistics. Those are all things that are going to serve him very well as he eventually becomes, a hero of the nation during the Civil War. I want to thank you all for being here with our Monitor Legacy programs. It's our privilege to be able to share information about the Civil War at sea in a way that helps you understand that the Civil War, in many ways, becomes an American victory as a result of the activities of people like John Lomer Worden of the US Navy. Thank you.